so rewarding to start with, if you're renovating or remodeling, and start with this old home that needs a lot of work and needs life brought back into it. And when you're done, you can stand back and say, us and our team did that. And the same thing with the new builds. You start with a piece of dirt, and when you're done, you've built this beautiful, huge building that hopefully is going to be there for hundreds of years, probably get renovated a few times along the way. And that's rewarding to know that you had a hand in that.
Welcome to episode 153 of the AFT Construction Podcast. And today we have Toby Cornell with Cornell Custom Construction in Southern California. Toby and I have been connected for quite some time through social media. I've been to his operation in California. I've toured his projects. He has some amazing projects out there, some amazing clients he's working for. And really, Toby is a third generation builder, right? And he talks about the complexity of his business and taking that over and what he's done with it. What I really enjoyed about the episode as well is he talks about some inspiring things that has driven him as a business owner, the charity arm that he's involved with, being active in the community, right? His weight loss journey. And really, he shared some really personal things at the end of the episode that really show the character of Toby and who he is. And I can tell you from knowing him that he's that person and the benefit he's doing in the community. So without further ado, let's get started. This past May, we had an amazing Contractor Coalition Summit. This was in Nashville with Nick Schiffer from Menace Builders and Morgan Molitor from Construction to Style out of Minnesota. And we are now up for our second round of the Contractor Coalition Summit that'll be in Huntington Beach from Sunday, November 6th through Wednesday, November 9th. Go to contractorcoalitionsummit.com, sign up, register. We have some amazing partners that'll be there sponsoring the event, amazing attendees that have already signed up. It's limited seating. We're only allowing 30 to attend. And again, this will be all things pricing, profitability, contracting, client expectations, scheduling, and of course, marketing and social media. Everything that we wish we knew in our business from the very beginning is all going to be wrapped up into just a couple days. So we'll see you there in Huntington Beach in November. So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast. I'm Brad Levitt, and today we have a good friend of mine, Toby Cornell. Welcome, Toby.
Hey, it's awesome to be on the show, Brad. So I did see that Nick, your buddy Nick from Menace Builders, had Mike Rowe on his live today, and so I know you're trying to one-up him, and you called me real quick, and you're like, hey, Toby, let's do a podcast real quick. So, no, that was awesome. Mike Rowe is one of my favorite guys, so good for him.
It's funny because Nick's been trying to do something with him forever. I know he's been trying to get him on his Modern Craftsman podcast, and like you said, dude, we just have to one-up and bring Toby on.
That's right.
It's bigger than Mike Rowe.
Yeah, we're gonna get the ratings right here.
That's how we do it here on the AFT Construction Podcast. So anyways, Toby is owner of Cornell Custom Construction. I know that you're pretty versatile doing commercial residential. Just a quick background. Toby and I have known each other through social media, through Instagram. I think we may have even connected through Martin a little bit because you were on his podcast and we connected.
Yeah. That's how we first connected, was through Martin. I think Martin was kind of the first guy to be doing all of these things. And then I think you did a podcast on Martin's show at the Vegas Builder show. And so then my wife and I were there, and then I was like, hey, I want to meet Brad because we've only met, through Instagram. So yeah, that was great.
Kind of a small world how we're all connected. And then since then I've, been in Newport with my family a few times. You work nearby and we've toured some of your projects and some amazing homes you do. And
yeah,
I think what's interesting, you and I a little bit, kind of have a same mentality, a little bit commercial, residential. We do a little bit of both. Right now, I found it's a little bit harder for me to do commercial just with supply chain. So how are you bridging that? Why both commercial and residential from your side?
Well, so for 21 years, we never did commercial, nor did we really have intentions to do commercial. Our original name was Cornell Custom Homes. And so I had a friend who was building a pretty high-end, express wash, one of those real nice ones. And so, he hit me up and he's like, hey, you can do this. And I said, I don't do a lot of commercial. And he goes, no, but I know you can do it. He goes, let's go look at one. I'll give you the plans. And after, I looked at them. And then I also, had to contemplate, hey, this is a friend of mine. Do I want to do work for friends?
And that relationship, right?
Right. But man, it worked out awesome. He's happier than can be. And so that kind of was the start of our commercial side of things. And so then I was bidding a few other commercial jobs, and the name Homes in our title, Cornell Custom Homes, wasn't resonating good with some of the people that we were trying to get bids to, because they're like, well, it says Homes in your name. Do you even do commercial work? And so then I just wanted to get rid of that stigma, and I changed the name to Cornell Custom Construction, which, encompasses everything.
It's amazing. So how was that? I mean, when you think about making that change, that's a big change going residential to now doing both. And understand the methodology and thought process there. Cornell Custom Homes is going to maybe take away a little bit of the business development and referral side from the commercial side. So I would imagine that was a strategy to say, let's look at more of a contractor title as opposed to just custom homes.
Exactly. Yeah. I was trying to diversify a little bit. We've done homes for so long, and we've done some really awesome projects, and I was actually just kind of looking for another challenge. So when we did this, everything went about as perfect as it could go. Scheduling went perfect. We had even some rain delays because we had a lot of rain that year. I think that was the last time we've had a lot of rain. That's probably
when did we get rain in California and Arizona?
I know,
right?
The last couple of years it's been terrible. We haven't gotten any. So yeah, but he was ecstatic. In fact, his plans are going through right now for another car wash, and so we're hoping to start it by the end of the year. And then also in the same area where we're working on that car wash, or where hopefully we'll be working on that car wash, is a restaurant, and we're ready to start that as soon as permits pull, and that should be hopefully at the end of the month. So
are you nervous at all doing commercial, especially with like timeline, supply chain, manpower?
No. So this job is also for a guy that I know who owns a few other restaurants in town. Super nice guy. And so he's got some subs already to do some of the other things because he has restaurants already open, but he just wants help with everything else. And so I told him, hey, this will be a great learning experience for me because I've actually never worked on a restaurant. So I like that chance. So he's giving us that chance, and we're going to give him our expertise in making it really nice. And but yeah. No, it's kind of nice, like you said, to diversify. I know you've done a few nice restaurants and, brew houses. And this one's kind of similar, I think, to that one that you did some years back, where it's just a really cool place to hang out. They got great food and they make their own, beer. And so yeah.
So very similar to what we've done. What I can say is make sure you're good friends with the health inspector and fire marshal. Like,
yeah,
not in like a bad way. I just mean it's like, make sure you understand exactly what they're looking for,
Yep.
code. And it's a lot different than, going through a normal C of O process.
Oh, absolutely.
That we've done.
And the owner's already told me about that. And he actually told me, you probably don't need to worry about that so much because I've already dealt with them and I know them. So I'll probably just handle that portion of it, and you can just
make sure you're on the side though, so you can learn and watch.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's what I told him.
Educational side.
I want to learn all of this for sure.
Yeah, that's a big part, and it's different because so think about it without saying how you're doing your contract or maybe your management, and we don't need to get into the weeds here. But whenever you're doing this, do you ever have any opposition when a client says, "Hey, I may have my own subs"? I know in this case there's a JV, right, joint venture. There's going to be some educational purposes behind it for you. How does that change your mentality when you have a standard contract? Are you negotiating that, like thinking of it as a CM at risk or like a construction manager?
For the restaurant, it's a project management contract because he's got, probably half the vendors that are going to be working on the site are from the owner, and then the other half will be from myself. And so that contract, allows that. But for my fixed contracts for, my homes and for the other commercial work we do, if they're fixed price contracts, then the owners don't have any say in who, does the work, except for like the car wash. There's a ton of other, vendors, for the equipment and installing that equipment and, the pay lanes and all that stuff. So those things obviously are out of my scope of work, so he can hire whoever he wants, for that stuff, which usually it's obviously the company that he's buying it from.
So it's interesting you bring that up, Toby, because I think what most people that haven't worked commercial and residential, and in commercial you have what's called FF&E, right? Furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And so if you're doing a restaurant, a brewery, hotel, right, coming in, and, there's a lot of furnishings and things provided by either, like, for example, Marriott. Working at Marriott, they're going to have a certain vendors that have to be, so the franchisee is buying through these specialty fixtures and you're coordinating install. So it's pretty common, especially in the commercial world, that you're working with multiple entities that aren't necessarily under the contract of Cornell Custom Construction, but you're managing. And so it's a little bit easier to be versatile and operate as a project manager as opposed to maybe a custom home where your client says, hey, Toby, I want to come in and paint my house and do my own landscape.
Right. So yeah, definitely. And I think also, Brad, and maybe you can attest to this too, I think it's easier to go from building luxury homes or custom homes to doing commercial work versus if I was a commercial guy wanting to switch up to do custom homes, which why would you want to do that? You'd be crazy to do that, right? So, I found one of the turnoffs for commercial work for me is the bidding process. You're bidding, usually against 3 or 4 other guys. And I mean, in my experience, just the people I've bid against on, the handful of jobs that we've bid for commercial, man, they bid it exactly per plan. They don't ask any questions. It's per plan, probably even knowing that, they're going to have to do some other things. But they're going to leave it out because they know they're going to get it in change orders later. And so that kind of really bothers me. So I kind of bring the custom home approach to the commercial jobs when I'm bidding them and say, hey, I think you're going to need this. And if this was my, place, I would probably do this. And have you thought about this? And, and they appreciate that, but it does make my price higher because I bid it the way that it should be. And the other guys, quite frankly, don't usually do that. And it's kind of the same way with the custom homes, but there's so much to interpretation in the custom homes because a lot of the plans we get, don't have all the details. That's the one nice thing about commercial is it does spec quite a few items, that are going in the project where custom homes, unless you have a designer involved from the beginning, just don't. I mean, we're just, telling the people, hey, give us pictures of what you like, and then we're going to bid it that way. And most of the time that works. But the ones that have a designer, then obviously that works out much better because then we do kind of have a more detailed scope of work.
It's interesting you bring this up because in the commercial world, when you're bidding commercial, as you mentioned, everything's specified. I mean, sometimes they may have an interior designer, but in most cases in commercial, the architect is doing full turnkey, right? They're specifying all the finishes, and as you mentioned, it's going to be very clear what your scope of work is. You're providing this, Toby, but you're going to exclude these FF&E or these items. I have a third party coming in and installing, the tanks and hooking up all the plumbing, but you have to have, these components available and accessible for us. And then, we take it from there. It's very clear. Residential doesn't have that. And I think this is where, I don't want to say we've fought this battle, but the mistakes I've made, which I've been pretty open about on the podcast, is when I've gone down this road in the custom world, like, okay, we'll figure it out. You don't have a designer, that's fine. And then you get months down the road and you're like, this is not working. Like the client hates me. Like I hate the process. Like it's not going well. It's super frustrating. Where now it's like, take that commercial mindset and why don't we do the same thing that involve us in the beginning, design, build, get the designer on architect, and let's get this all figured out and drawn up before we even break ground.
Yeah. And that's another awesome thing about the commercial side of it is the homeowners, or I call them homeowners, the owners aren't typically as emotionally involved. So they see this as a business. It's going to be a moneymaker. They want it to be opened as soon as possible. They're not going to care about the details as much as they do if it was, a home that they were building for themselves. They basically just want you to get it done as fast as possible, for, the least amount of money for a good product, and they just want to open so they can make money.
It is true. I mean, a lot of times, I don't know how it is for you. I mean, a lot of times you're dealing with LDs, right? Liquidated damages. It could be in commercial because, as you mentioned, a day not opened, they're losing revenue, right? It's really big to get this open by a certain date. How does it change the direction? Because it's really easy mentally to say, I want to go to commercial, but as you mentioned, there's a learning curve, understanding. Just a couple examples, right? Restaurant, you're dealing with the fire marshal, health code inspector, which is totally different in addition to the building inspector. Like you have multiple parties now coming in and you're dealing with FF&E and other subcontractors. And so there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve for your team management side. How was that going to the car wash just to train your personnel, to kind of think outside the box to now change that mind frame?
They loved it. They loved how fast we could go. We're used to begging our clients for information so we can keep going. And on the commercial side of it, we didn't have any of those questions. There may have been a couple, but for the most part, there aren't any. It's just, you got the plans, you get the scheduling, done, and you go. Just make sure the guys are showing up when they need to show up and doing the good work. So yeah, that was one thing my project manager who worked on a few of the jobs, he was telling me, man, can we do some more of those commercial jobs? Because, the client side of it is, it's can be very daunting dealing with emotional clients. So,
for example, just to give some context here, I would imagine, and you've done some really high-end homes, some big homes, some big remodels, that I would imagine build time anywhere from 12 months, 24 months. I mean, you're talking 1 to 2 year builds.
For sure.
Not including pre-construction design, bid process, So these are multiple year projects, whereas a commercial car wash, I mean, what is that, 5 months, 6 months, maybe 8?
Well,
I mean,
actually, the pre portion of it, getting it through, usually takes about 2 years. Car washes are hard to get through because you usually have to get
through pre-construction, through the permit.
But the actual build portion of it is like 7 to 9 months. So it goes fairly fast compared to the homes that we're doing, which, like you said, I mean, it's 14 months to 2 years typically. So.
See, and what's a little bit different, I mean, I think it's important for anyone listening to understand the difference here is like when we did the brewery, same thing, a lot of my houses are 12 to 24 months. I mean, we have one right now that's going to be a 2.5 year build and 2 years in design, 4.5 year commitment, right?
Yeah.
But the brewery, I mean, there's design time in there, which we didn't have a whole lot because architects kind of turnkey on this, but the build was like 4.5 months. I mean, it's fast.
Yeah.
You're doing like $1 million brewery in 4 months. And so that's where it's just like lightning quick. And, it is a little bit more stressful in the sense that you have to move in 4 months. So you're working, long hours, nights, weekends. But on the flip side, where my team, just being open, struggles a little bit, we may hire a mechanical company on the custom world, super custom in the mechanical design, and they have just a few employees. You may get 1 or 2 guys, maybe 3 if you're lucky, show up to the job site. Whereas on the commercial side, you're going to have like 30 guys show up. It's a big company, 300 employees. It's a different operation.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing is that the crossover between subcontractors, going from custom to commercial, you're not going to have a lot of the same guys doing your custom home stuff that you're going to have on the commercial. So I had to go find, basically a whole new team of trade contractors and suppliers. And but it was kind of fun and exciting and something new.
How did you do it? How did you find them? Because that was my next question.
So,
you have to find a whole new trade base.
So you've heard of the Blue Book?
Oh, yeah.
So I went through and I started looking through, and the funny thing, the people that I hit up, because car washes, in restaurants, they're kind of specialty things. When I started hitting up people from the Blue Book, a handful of them had already bid the job that I was bidding for another contractor. And they're like, oh, yeah, you want this price? All right, we'll give it to you, too. So I'm like, oh,
send it
cool.
to you right now.
Yeah. So, and then some of them I just went around, and you find other businesses that are building like type projects that you're working on. And, you walk around and you find the subcontractors, and then there was one guy that we connected with that installs a lot of stuff. Equipment. And so I said, hey, who are some of the subcontractors that, you like working with? And he gave me a whole handful. So they came from a number of different directions, but yeah, I mean, it's finding the right guys to do the work. It was kind of fun and exciting again.
So what does that split look like for you when you're looking, residential, commercial as a company?
Right now it's probably 80-20. So I think we've got 6 homes going, a couple renovations, and 4, I think, ground up builds going, and then we're hopefully going to be starting a few more. And then we've got these couple commercial jobs starting.
So why construction? I mean, why pick the hardest industry to work in?
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes I ask myself the same thing.
I mean, we all ask ourselves that. No, but honestly, it's so rewarding to start with, if you're renovating or remodeling, and start with this old home that needs a lot of work and needs life brought back into it. And when you're done, you can stand back and say, us and our team did that. And the same thing with the new builds. You start with a piece of dirt, and when you're done, you've built this beautiful, huge building that hopefully is going to be there for hundreds of years, probably get renovated a few times along the way. And that's rewarding to know that you had a hand in that.
So how have you seen, I mean, just being in construction, I mean, you've been in it your whole career, right, Toby, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
So looking at it now, it's been a little bit different in the last 3 years, right? Essentially since 2020, these 2.5 years. How has it changed, for you looking at your systems? And you mentioned that even pricing, how that's changed, for clients, systems, processes. I mean, your whole approach or expectations, communication you're setting with your customer now, knowing what you know for the last 2 years.
Yeah. So, like everybody else, we had jobs we were in the middle of when COVID hit. And luckily, the projects we were working on they said, keep going. Cause I asked them, do you want us to keep going or we'll stop? And everything was fine for a while. And then all of a sudden you had the delays, and then price increases started happening. And, and the jobs you're in the middle of, you didn't account for that. And so, you were kind of working together with the homeowner together on it. You're kind of voicing your concerns and saying, hey, this isn't really our fault, and most of the time, or most of the clients realize that, and they understand that, and they had sympathy for us and understood that. But then you have some that don't, well, how come this? How come that? Well, we're in the middle of, a pandemic at the time. Things aren't going to be running totally smooth. And so, now we have the new normal of, windows taking 23 weeks and garage doors taking 20 weeks and interior doors, taking a long time and just about everything. And so what we've had to do is obviously change what we're doing. And we used to order windows once we were framed up, because we would let the owner walk through the house so they can make their changes, because these windows that we're buying, are tens of thousands of dollars sometimes. And so to make a change, you're buying a whole new window. You can't just return it. And so now we're having to order windows, before foundations even start sometimes. So you're having to, switch up when you order things, and you're just having to get everything. I tell the owners, I would rather have the products waiting for us instead of us waiting for them. So let's get everything ordered, as soon as possible, so that we can stay ahead of it. Most of the time it works. Sometimes you have homeowners who kind of lag on the decision making, and you keep hounding them, telling them, hey, this is going to hold things up. And they typically they still understand. I mean, it's no secret that it's affected so many industries, but especially ours.
So how do you bridge that part when you talk about selections on the, because on the commercial side, we spoke about, how formatted it is, and it's contextualized, like everything's thought out and, planned, right? Because the emotions aside, there's a business to run. Residential is totally different, so pre-con, how often you mentioned you have 6 projects right now. How often are you involved in pre-con, or do these come into play late in the process for you?
So as far as decision-making of materials in the pre-con?
Well, I think, I guess where I'm going is that, are they involving you at the very beginning so that you're working with the designer and architect to work through all these like value engineering and pricing? Or do they come to you and say, Toby, we have this project and it's already designed and now you got to figure out how to make it work?
So it used to be 10 years ago and more, because I've been in business 25 years. So 10 years ago, it seemed like and before that, they would come to me first, because we did a lot of projects in one city, and there was one development in particular where we did a lot of work. And so I kind of became the guy in that project, and so people would buy a lot, and then they would come to me and say, hey, who's the architect, who's a designer, and we would get a team. And then I would kind of help along the way, see the plans kind of midway through and say, hey, you may want to change this, you may want to change that. But the last 10 years and to present have been a lot different for some reason. The plans, every architect or every plan that we get typically is from a different architect. And a lot of them I've never even heard of. And then we're having to go through and then try and define the scope of work. And so a couple years ago, or year and a half ago, actually I owe you the credit on this. I finally started charging for bids and using a pre-construction agreement. And that's the best thing I've ever done, because like you said, I asked you, I think we were golfing, and I asked you, I'm like, well, what about the people who say, well, I'm not going to have you bid it then, and you're missing out on that project? And you said, Toby, those aren't your clients anyway. They're gonna shop it to 3 or 5 guys, and more than likely you were gonna be too high for them, or they were just shopping for price. And so you've now eliminated that portion of it. And if they're willing to pay for us to give a scope of work and a contract, more than likely they're gonna use us to do the work. And I do refund some of the money back if we get the project, so that's kind of a plus as well. So
it's interesting. I mean, it changes a lot when you have that conversation. I think that lesson I learned, I had a client that reached out to me, and this was early in my career. I first started my company. I mean, this is like 8 years ago. And he said, Brad, when I was bidding my house, and this is before, he had already had the house built. I hadn't started my company yet, but he came to me and he said during the bid process, one of the builders charged him money, and he said, I actually respected that more because by him charging money, it knew that he was actually engaged and enthused, and it wasn't just like, he was invested, if you will.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting to hear that from the customer, because I've always thought the other way, that if I tell them I'm going to charge them money, they're going to say, pack sand. You're like, you're not.
Right.
Who do you think you are, Toby?
Yeah. So like I'll usually ask them to email me a plan, and I'll look at it and say, hey, you're going to be in about this cost range. But, if you want me to continue, with the process, I'm going to have to, charge, and here's a pre-construction agreement. And after I explain it to them, most of the people that I've given it to are like, yeah, I actually can respect that. Like, nobody wants to waste their time. So yeah, I think it's been positive for the most part. I've only had one person who said, well, yeah, then I don't want you to bid it. And I already knew that those people probably weren't going to be one of my, maybe a customer of mine anyway. When we were going through the process, I might have weeded them out and said, I don't probably want to do work for you anyway. And so that's another skill that you learn over the years, because, when I was younger, I would take every job that came my way, and then you're dealing with nightmare clients, and you can't sleep at night, and, you wonder, why am I even doing this? And so now I want this to be fun. I've done this for so long. And so I'm upfront with people. I'm like, hey, this should be fun. There's going to be stressful times for you and for me, but for the most part, this has to be a fun thing. So when you're done, you're proud of it. You're going to be, proud to say, yeah, Cornell built my house. And so, yeah, when you kind of set that expectation in the beginning that, hey, this needs to be kind of a fun project, you don't have to agonize about every single decision. If you're losing sleep at night over it, you're doing it wrong.
So let me ask you this: being that it's kind of changed this last 10 years, you mentioned early on that they're coming to you first, especially in the development you were in, and now I know your footprint's pretty big there in California. Your design team, are they pushing clients to like, hey, let's get the contract in early? And the reason I bring that up is what I've noticed is there are a core group of designers and architects here in Phoenix. And this isn't like lack of a better term, like a good old boys club. It's not that. There's a lot of females in there. I'm just kind of using a generalized term here, but it's more like I want to work with a reputable builder and a reputable designer. Here's a couple for you to speak with. If they're going to the architect first, for example, he'll say, look, you got to get the builder in now, got to get the designer in now. Here's a couple to talk to, because they understand too the value, right? They want to understand. Okay, Brad, are you doing masonry stem walls or poured in place concrete? It really helps them design the house, right? To just understand logistically how we prefer to build and be more cost effective for the client. And then, architects not out here bidding every house. They want to have budgets in place and have a contractor lead them across the way. So what I found is there are a core group of people that are really good. Like they understand, kind of like you and I do, that there's a lot of value for the client having that team together early on. Yeah. Are you seeing that in your market, or how?
So for the most part, no, it's terrible. So
why is that? You got to fix that.
Honestly, I don't know. So there's a couple architects that we've worked and done a lot of their homes in the past, and so those people try and get us on board as soon as possible, and they'll send an email out to the owners and to us. Hey, here's an introductory email. If you have any questions or anything, let Toby know, and we'll be sending him plans, during the process. And then that's kind of when I'll talk to him about the pre-construction agreement. And, hey, if you want me to help you, through this process, we can do that, and we can offer our services for that, and we can even help get it through the city if you'd like, because the problem with most architects right now is they're so busy, and a lot of stuff just sits, and they're working on whatever project that the client is screaming at them the most. And so
the squeaky wheel.
Yeah, and I'm finding that with a lot of architects. So if I'm involved, then I can stay on the architect and take that out of their court. And then if it's in plan check, and we know a lot of plan checkers, a lot of cities, because we've worked at a lot of them, so then you can kind of put some pressure on them and say, hey, where are we at in the queue? Are we almost done? Can you get us up to the top? We're ready to start this home. And so homeowners don't know how to handle those situations. Every time I talk to a owner who's dealing with an architect, they'll say, well, he said in a couple weeks to give him a call back, and that was like a month ago. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll stay on him, because if you don't, you're never going to get your home drawn up.
How long is it taking for permit? Because for us, they're submitting it. It could take 6-8 months at least, to get the permit.
Honestly, it's at least a year. And that's it. We did 2 jobs in Glendora. We're currently working on both. It took, I think, 1.5 years for one, and I think even longer than that for the other one. And part of that, I guess, was COVID. The offices were shut down. You had to submit everything online. But man, just the and it's not only Glendora. It was a lot of cities. They take a long time, and I still don't know why. And I guess what I've told a few people is I wish that they had to go through this process of building their own house. And then maybe they would see like, hey, yeah, we can't just let this stuff sit on the desk for 2 weeks and then realize, oh, yeah, I should probably call the architect or the contractor, let them know the plans are sitting here for corrections or that the plan is approved, because that happens so often. And there are some cities that are very efficient too. So they're not all bad, but quite a few of them are still, at least a year.
It's interesting you bring that up because it's not just from the client side. So I've seen there's a couple of architects here in town and designers, and their mindset's always been, which I really appreciate, and this is why they're good partners of ours. They say, Brad, it's not a project until you get a shovel on the ground, and they understand that pre-construction process, the longer it takes, the more worn out the client gets, the more emotionally drained they are. That sometimes those projects will never go. And it's one thing as designer architect, they have a fee structure they're getting paid through design, but if it doesn't go, the builder typically doesn't get compensated to some extent. And they don't get to see their design go. And they're really committed to say, this is information in and out, engineering, city, like we got to press on these guys. Yeah,
I've actually had 3 projects through my career that took so long. One of them was up to 3 years, Brad. And it was a super complicated home. It was 12,000 square foot house, absolutely beautiful. The entire plan got done, but it was the civil engineer, architect, landscape architect. Everybody was working together, to create this dream property. And it took, and to get through the homeowners association. So all of these factors, and then I think the architect got about halfway through. And the owner made a ton of changes. So then it's kind of all started over again. And so we got all the way done. I gave them a price to do the job. And in that 3-year period, their business, kind of went down a little bit. And this was obviously a substantial amount of money for this project, for the yard and the house. And so they said, you know what, our business isn't as good as it was when we started this process 3 years ago. So, and they actually did pay me for my time. They recognized I had a ton of time because I was in it from the beginning, and they actually did pay me for my time, which I was very grateful for, but the house never got built. And we've had that happen a couple times. That was the most extreme condition, but it's sad. It was so sad because that house was going to be absolutely phenomenal.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Windows. When it comes to building homes at AFT, almost every project has Pella Windows. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers. Because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. For those of you that have listened to the podcast, you know how big of a fan we are of Build-A-Trend and that we have used this software for the last 4 years. And many of the guests that we've brought on the podcast are also Build-A-Trend users. And in this day and age, with as busy as all of us are in construction, as complicated as it is with escalation pricing, lead times, tracking, organization, all of us need a good project management software to help simplify, and organize our business. And there are a couple features that we love a ton about Buildertrend. And one is the owner portal. The other is the daily logs. And these are features that we use daily, right? Half of my clients are out of state. And as an owner, it is so imperative how we communicate with our clients, with our team, with our customers. And through Buildertrend, this allows us that quick connection. They can check at any time. We can communicate with them. We're up to date. This has actually helped us win jobs, win projects because of that organization, especially at pre-construction. And Buildertrend also offers a ton of service on the back end, training and understanding and workshops, to help us use our software effectively. They also have the podcast, The Building Code. To learn more, head to buildertrend.com/AFT to get a 60-day money-back guarantee on your Buildertrend account. That's 60 days to make sure you love this product with no pressure, and I know you will. So how does and it's interesting. Well, before I get into a question about business development is, I can relate to that story because through COVID, right, we saw pricing just take this jump. Mm-hmm. And part of it's inflation, a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes, supply chain. But the reality is we had some that really were lengthy in design and in pre-con. And by the time final pricing came in, the client's like, there's no way. Like, here's where we're budgeted, here's where we're at now, and it just changed. And so, that's where you and I, it's tough to balance, that everything and forecast as a company because we're doing so much business development and sales, mm-hmm. hoping that all these go forward as planned. But sometimes some fall out of the pipeline. So right. How do you manage just that workload, business development to make sure you continue to have work, and where do those leads come from?
So most of my leads actually come from my website. So,
You're like the first contractor that's told me they've come from their website. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, so I have Martin actually takes care of my SEO services, and I do pay.
Look at Martin.
Yeah. And so he always, every month he'll send me like a diagnostic, and we're always on the front page. Like if anybody punches in custom home contractor in Southern California, we're going to be on the first page. And so I get actually quite a bit. And there's on my website, there is a, like a contact portion. And so then most of the time they'll, I think Martin set it up so that it gives the square footage, what city is it in? And so then I can already identify if they're a client of mine or not. If it's too far away, I'll just email them back nicely. Hey, thanks for reaching out, but that's out of, our service area. But more times than not, it leads to a longer conversation. Obviously Instagram is good, and that probably leads people to our website as well. And then you have Facebook too, but that's obviously not as good as Instagram. I think the demographics of Instagram, I would say it's probably 30 to 50, and that's our ideal clients right now. So,
mm-hmm. I was going to ask that, like ideal age, as you think of your ideal client, what their age range is, but going back to the lead generation as they're going through the website, how are you managing the CRM portion, right? So the CRM or like, managing the clients that are hanging out there and leads, are you vetting those yourself? Do you have someone in your office doing that?
No, I do them myself. If somebody calls the office, my office manager will kind of vet them because we have done some renovations, and so on Instagram, it looks like we do a lot of them, but in reality, I only like doing very large ones. We don't do a lot of small ones. So we have a lot of people that call for, a bathroom, renovation or just a kitchen renovation. And I just tell them, listen, we're too busy to do those right now. And some people actually get upset that you don't want to do their job. But, it's just, I tell them,
are you too good for me, Toby?
Right. It has nothing to do with that. We're just too busy. So, I mean, we've got these bigger projects that we're already committed to. And so once we get an email from a prospective client, then I'll send them usually some more questions. And then I'll set up a time to talk, and then we'll kind of go from there. And some of them don't have plans yet, so I'll refer them to some architects. Some of them have plans already, and I'll tell them to email them over, and I'll kind of give them a rough estimate of what I think that project's going to cost. And then, if we're still talking after that, then, we'll move to the pre-construction agreement phase.
So how do you know your numbers so well? And the reason I ask that, because I think you gave this little tip and nugget earlier in the conversation. I think what a lot of builders waste their time doing, whether they're custom builders, new construction, remodelers. You can spend a lot of time driving, meeting with clients, vetting them, seeing the scope of work, having plans sent. And so you can go down this rabbit hole of endless appointments and client meetings, whereas quickly you could take a project, from a client, look at this and say, you're going to be in this range. And if we're speaking the same language, or I could do this renovation, you're going to be in this number, rough,
Right.
give or take. And again, now if you want to go to the next step, here's my PSA, my service agreement, and here's my cost of the project, and here's my value and everything that I put together. But the biggest key has been to vet them right away on number, because if you're saying this house is 700 a foot and they're thinking 200 a foot, I mean, you're way off. Why even waste your time, right? Or even present that.
Right.
So how are you keeping track of just understanding kind of the market and your database and projects you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, we're always bidding jobs, so I know what about the current cost per square foot is, for a type of home that somebody wants. And so I just tell them that, hey, I've looked at your plans. It's going to fall within some of the homes, the same price range of some of the homes we're working on right now. And it's going to be about this much money, usually within a $50 a square foot, range. And, and then we'll go from there. If they say we're kind of in the price range that they were thinking, then we'll continue the process. But more times than not, you have a lot of people who are like, well, I was going to buy an existing home, but I figured it'd just be cheaper to build one, and I have to burst their bubble. And I tell them it's never going to be cheaper to build your own house, at least not in Southern California, maybe in other parts of, the nation, but not in Southern California. It's just, it's always...
That's where you come back and you say, you know what, that's a great idea. Instead of buying a used car, I'm going to go buy a new car because I want to save some money, right?
Right. I tell them, I said, if that was the case, wouldn't everybody be building a house right now?
Yeah, you'd never buy a used one. Who wants to, use someone else's toilet, right? You might as well just build a new one.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, what I love about you, Toby, too, is not only through social media where I followed you, we've been friends for a long time, but you've been pretty open about your fitness journey too, right? I think you've lost over 30 pounds and you made this amazing transformation. And I mean, you always looked good before, but speak about that, because one thing that's really hard, and I don't think there's an easy solution to work-life balance, right? It's just balance. You have to figure out what that means to you. But exercise, diet is something that's really hard, to change, especially in the building industry. We're busy,
right?
Stressful. You're eating because you're stressed. You don't have time, so you're driving through Mickey D's drive-through, whatever it may be.
Lunch on the go. No, so definitely it's been one of the biggest blessings I've ever done, and I get so mad that I didn't do this, when I was 30. I'm 48 right now. So in my 30s, it's a
little harder.
In my 30s, I was probably the heaviest I ever was, and then I got control of it a little bit, and then through COVID, and just through the years, it slowly comes back, and through COVID, it kind of came back faster, because, you're sitting at home and our kids weren't in school, and we were cooking every single night as a family, which was actually pretty awesome. My kids were baking all these awesome desserts, and, you may have a few alcoholic beverages here and there, and, before you know it, it catches up to you. And so all of our gyms were shut down. Mm-hmm. So when the gyms opened back up, we actually had a trip to Hawaii planned for my daughter and my son's graduation from college and high school. So I decided at the last minute to lose some weight. I hit my buddy up who did this plan, and I lost a little bit of weight before we went to Hawaii. And then when I got home from Hawaii, I was like, man, that plan was actually pretty good. I was never hungry. It's kind of a higher protein, diet. It's, it fits with my workout schedules. And so I ended up just continuing, doing that plan. And it's been awesome. And I've actually, referred that plan to many other people. And shoot, I have people text me all the time, hey, I lost 50 pounds. Thanks so much for hooking me up with that. But I just think that when you're in your 30s, people just don't think it's important. And when you're in your 40s and 50s, sometimes you think, well, it's too late. I am what I am. It's just, it is what it is. I'm just going to be overweight for the rest of my life. And, and 30 pounds isn't a substantial amount, but it was a substantial amount to me. And so I like to equate it. We'll put it in builder terms. Sometimes an older home, or I guess it doesn't even have to be older. Sometimes a home needs to be transformed or renovated, because it gets, stale and you get tired of it. And, I think that's kind of what I needed. My body needed a transformation for, not only for my physical wellness, but for my mental wellness as well, because you do not realize how much what you put in your mouth affects your mental clarity and just your mental well-being until you eat clean and you stop drinking, alcohol, a lot. And it's not like I drink alcohol every day, but, if you have it, a drink when you get home, unwind, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does affect, your brain and brain fog and your mental clarity. And the same thing with what you put in your mouth, eating processed foods and things that are, bad for your body. It's going to also give you brain fog and kind of mess you up mentally, and you don't even know it until you stop. And so that's what I discovered after, a month of eating clean and not having alcohol. You discover real fast, like, hey, I feel better than I've felt in probably since I was in my 20s, and I started going to the gym every day. And so before I did this, I'd usually get up probably around 5:30 in the morning. Now I get up at 4:05 every morning. I'm going to the gym very first thing, knocking that out, and then I get on with my day. And I do that 5 or 6 days a week. And, I'm sleeping better than I was. I'm not snoring anymore probably because of the weight loss. And so Shelly really liked that. And I mean, it was really getting bad, Brad. She would wake me up right before I started losing weight. She would wake me up multiple times a night. You're snoring so loud. You got to do something about this. And so I even bought the Breathe Right strips, and nothing worked. So yeah, losing weight worked. So she was thankful for that. But yeah, it's been an awesome thing. And I just encourage, everybody, take your health a little more serious, because if you do, just try it for a month. I mean, that 30 days is not a long time. Eat clean for a month. Stop drinking alcohol for a month and see how you feel. And more times than not, you're going to be like, wow, why didn't I do this before? And you're going to continue the journey. And of course, nobody's perfect. You're going to slip up once in a while, but it's about long-term consistency. It's not about the short term. So,
well, it's interesting. I was just making some notes because, one of my questions, I mean, of course, talking about your journey, which is remarkable, especially as we know, us as males, metabolism slows down. It's a little bit harder in our 40s than, as you mentioned, our 30s or 20s to do this. But, just speak about just physically, like performance at work, mental, as you mentioned a little bit, like, is there a change in like confidence? Just you like confident, right?
Absolutely.
How you're, leadership and directing yourself and your company and your clients, especially now that you have, you've completely transformed.
So one of the things that we did during this journey, which, losing a little bit of weight, then I was like, well, I'm ready for another challenge. So me and my wife, Shelly, did 75 hard. And so that's a program, you can look it up. It's a free program, and it's not, people think, that's a fitness program. It's not. It's a mental challenge. You have to do all the tasks within, your day. And if you don't do them, you fail and you start over. And so we were able to complete that all 75 days. And yeah, we were dedicated to it. And so that kind of, opened my eyes. And part of that process is reading a self-help book, 10 pages every day. I never read books before that, I very rarely. And so, I'm reading all these amazing books that are, helping me and giving me confidence. And, and then in the last year, we picked up a bunch of work, and, it may just be the times that we're in, or, it may be, I'm more laser focused now than I used to be. It could be a combination of things, but I'd like to think that, my fitness journey and getting, well has helped, my entire life. It's helped me personally. Me and Shelly's relationship is better. It's helped me business wise. I try and be a more positive person now, and I was never a downer, but as the longer you're in business, it starts wearing on you after time.
The more you can get mad at people all the time.
Yeah. I mean, your patience gets thin. And I remember my dad yelling at somebody. I was in his office, and I remember my dad yelling at somebody, way back when I was a kid. And I said, Dad, why'd you get so mad? And he goes, you know what? Don't talk to me about this because you don't know. He goes, talk to me when you've owned your own business for 20 years. And when we hit that 20-year mark, I remember thinking, I think I was just about ready to blow up on somebody. And I said, oh, yeah, Pops was right. You lose your patience a lot faster. So yeah, and the self-confidence thing, it's huge. I mean, when you walk into a room and you just feel better and, obviously you're looking better, you're going to have more self-confidence.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. There was a time I even went, I think 3 weeks without sugar, and it's really hard, right? It was really hard for me because I love sugar. Like my wife will laugh because like I love sugar candy. I love ice cream. I mean, that's
who
kind of
doesn't,
weakness,
right?
Who doesn't, right? Those are good things in life. But you go without it, and then if you really look at it, not eating bread or like condiments or like anything, yogurt, no juice, unless it's just like normal fruit, like it's really hard. But what I found is, energy. Like I had so much energy.
Yes.
I'm like, it makes no sense, but it's like totally transformed. But to your point, when people speak about like, well, how do I get better at public speaking? I mean, a lot of it is, you have to know the topic. You have to know the content, right? Like the more knowledgeable you are about this, the more you can stand up and be like direct and speak in front of people. The confidence side, right? As you mentioned, like just having confidence because of mental health, physical health. And we don't talk enough about mental health, that all of us, I mean, here, I love this podcast because, I get inspired by people such as yourself, Toby, that like, okay, well, I can make this change now. I mean, he's inspired me to do this. I need to apply this business model, my company business. But the reality is that it's a hard business, like construction, design, any fee for business is hard. The restaurant, the service industry. And that's why the camaraderie is big. That's why health is important, taking that time to like sharpen the saw, whatever that means to certain people, right? But that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've always been a fit guy, and I've always actually admired that. And then you got guys like Killowen, his arms are huge. I was like, man, no wonder they put him on that show. He probably got half the viewers just by putting him on that show. So no, he's an awesome guy.
I love Tyler. He's on the podcast, and actually Amy with MM Lighting has been on the podcast too. And the funny thing is, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but he did some Instagram reel. And I just asked him for tickets to the gun show. and Amy and like Houston's dying laughing. Like it's just fun because I love Tyler. We were in college together, but I'm like, man, I'm just not hitting the gym hard enough when I look at Tyler. It just depresses me.
Yeah. I'm trying to get my arms half as big as Tyler's. So
it's amazing. So another part of this, I mean, mental health, physical health that we mentioned, Toby, something that's really neat about you as well. I had Jimmer Fredette a couple weeks ago. And he's big in, philanthropic, giving back and charity, which is another big thing. I mean, you serve as a board member. So if you're not busy enough as we're trying to figure out work-life balance, and now you're throwing in 4 a.m. journeys to the gym, now you're doing the philanthropic and charity side. I mean, how has that played a role? Just mental health, physical health, well-being, company, like really where you're at as a person, as a family, and your goals?
So, a passion of mine has been on being this board. I had childhood cancer when I was 8 years old. I had leukemia. And so I went through that journey and survived. And so, now when I was older.
Hold on. I got to stop you there. You had leukemia when you were 8?
Yeah. Yeah. So 40 years ago.
That's amazing. Speak about that. I had no idea. I mean, I'm just finding this out now. I mean, just going through that, especially at such a young age, to get through that.
Yeah, no, it was not a fun process. And chemotherapy, the process they used to cure me was kind of still a little bit newer, because they were still kind of doing radiation. They asked my parents, hey, what do you want to do, chemo or radiation? And my dad asked the doctor, well, if it was your kid, what would you do? And he said, I think I would do the chemo. And luckily that's what they did. And so, that was a 3-year journey of staying in the hospitals. And
I'm still dumbfounded. Sorry that I keep interrupting.
No worries.
8 to 11. I mean, it's such a young, impressionable age, right? You're still developing, and to go through that, just you think about emotional scarring, just going through chemo,
I missed a lot of school.
Missing school, missing education, diet changes. You can't eat things, right? It changes your whole body.
So my handwriting's not very good. I'm gonna blame it on the cancer, because that was the time the time in my life where you learn to write, right? So actually no, I think it's hereditary, because my dad has terrible writing, and so does my little brother. So, I mean, it was I thank God every day that I'm on this earth and made it through that, because there's a lot of kids and adults that don't make it through that journey, and so it's. And I think thankful for that I had good parents that, helped me get through that, and my sister. So, in fact, my sister.
So is that why you were why you're so philanthropic? I mean, is that part of it? Just,
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was looking it was probably 11, 12 years ago. I was looking, hey, I need to do something else. I'd like to help some organization out that maybe has something to do with cancer and kids. And I didn't see any. There wasn't really any available. So we built a 15,000 square foot home on this incredible property. They just finished it, and the homeowners, were friends of mine, and they said, hey, we're going to have it's the first ever event for this Let It Be Foundation. It's a husband and a wife, Ruth and Michael. They had a daughter, Carla, who passed away of brain cancer. And so they started this foundation about a year. Well, this event was about a year after she passed. And it was at this house that we had built. And so we got to, it was still very raw at that point. The doctors were there. She was up there speaking, and she's a very good speaker, and she was obviously crying, and the whole crowd is in tears. And I remember telling Shelly, I want to be involved in this. Like, this is something good. And so I learned more about it, and what they like to do is, we're not curing cancer. There's other organizations for that. What we like to do is we help the families in this area who need help, and we're trying to normalize like the family while they're going through this, because like my sister, when I had cancer, I got all the attention, and she didn't, because I was the one that had cancer. And so we recognize that, and so we try and make the siblings, if they have any, feel special, and we'll bring them gifts just like we're bringing the kids who have cancer gifts. And we may, if the father mows the yard, well, obviously we want him at the hospital, trying to be with his son to make them better, or daughter. And so we'll hire a landscaper and pay for it for the duration, that they need it, or we'll hire a house cleaner. And so we're trying, our goal is to try and make it as normal as possible, because like me as a cancer survivor, when I did have cancer when I was a kid, I didn't want no one feeling sorry for me. I just wanted to be treated normal. And that's the way that a lot of the kids are today. They just want to be treated normal. So we have lots of events, and we have a whole youth team that is made up of all the high schools in the area. I believe there's like 40 or 50 youth team members on the Let It Be Foundation team. And so they help us out at the events. They'll go visit the kids and bring them presents. And the kids love this. What little kid, doesn't love having some high schoolers come and visit them. And so that's just been a huge blessing. I've been a board member for 11 or 12 years now. And so, yeah, I mean, I like to encourage, and that's not going to be for everybody, but everybody does have something that they're passionate about, whether it be feeding the homeless or, maybe a sports program or whatever your passion is. Maybe, reach out, because there's so many people that would need help, and it's not only a blessing for them, but it's a blessing for you too. After you're done, then you do an event, and or you bring some presents to a family at Christmas, and you get to talk to the parents and the kids. It's very rewarding, to see the smiles on their faces.
It's interesting, Toby. I mean, just hearing you speak, it reminds me of my favorite quote that I share, with my kids, and something that's had a huge impact. It said, I complained because I had no shoes until I saw a man that had no feet, right? And that's always had an impact, because I think a lot of times, it's easy, lack of a better word, we sulk or complain, or maybe through social media, we covet what other people have. Why did it happen to me? Why am I not having this success? Why did this not work out? Why am I not lucky or be born, in this family, or whatever it may be, right? We all have things that inadequacies, right? But what's interesting, I mean, the minute that, as you mentioned, Toby, when you serve people, like when you serve somebody, there's a different act of love there, if you will. And I look back at some of my closest friends are ones that I've served with and served others. And, that act of service really breaks down kind of that human barrier, if you will. And I love what you're doing, because you think about the Let It Be Foundation, and it's just amazing to me that something I never thought of it. The kid's going through cancer. It's so hard on the family. Even you see this little kid, and I don't want to see kids with cancer. I mean, it's like the saddest thing ever. But you don't think about the siblings or everyone else that's impacted by it, and maybe gets overlooked. Yeah. And so you bringing all this together, as you mentioned with your sister, I mean, it's things that all of us probably haven't thought of, that now we're more aware, just, hearing you speak about this.
Yeah. Oh, and it is a great organization. And like I said, it's just been a huge blessing, in my life. And so, when I talk to these parents of these kids, I say, hey, and a lot of the kids have the same thing that I had. They have leukemia, and the survival rate is very high, much higher than it was 40 years ago when I had it. But, it's still a process. For boys, it's 2 years. For boys, it's 3 years. And for girls, it's typically 2. And so that's still a long journey that they have to go through. And so if I talk to the parents and say, hey, I had cancer and, now I've got this beautiful family. And so you're kind of giving them hope, like they'll even say, hey, I told my son after you left or daughter, that, hey, Toby had the same type of cancer that you have. And it kind of gives them some hope. And so that was kind of an added bonus that, I wasn't expecting, but it was, also another blessing,
It's amazing. I had a lot of respect for you, Toby, and just hearing just your mentality about, going through your weight loss journey, health, thinking about your philanthropic activities, knowing you had leukemia. I mean, there's really no excuse, right, for anybody that, and to your point that being there with people that have gone through this, there's a lot to be said about someone that's been there, right? Because I could say, yeah, you can get through this, but that doesn't mean much. But someone like you that said, I've had leukemia, I've done it, right? And I've seen the same thing where, I've been through divorce and it was really difficult at a time in my life. And, so there are people that gave me a lot of strength through that. And then I look back at other people going through it and it's, haven't gone through it. There's a different understanding, right, of what people are dealing with. And I love that you're utilizing that in such a positive manner and making a huge impact on your community. Yeah.
And it's fun because I've gotten my friends involved. You get some of the local vendors and, your trades involved. We've done a couple of room makeovers for some of the kids, and that was kind of fun. And we had to get it done really fast, because they're not able to stay in their room while we're doing it. But in fact, the local news even came out on one of them. And, and I'm not looking for any shout outs or anything. And they didn't actually, I don't think even said, hey, Cornell Custom Homes at the time did this. I didn't care about that. It was just seeing the smile on the kids' faces, and I still see those kids, they've gone on and they're doing great and they're in high school now. And I think one of them's even out of high school that we did a room makeover for. And, but they'll always remember me as the guy that, did their little makeover in their room. And, and hopefully those kids will see, hey, this organization helped us out when we were down, and they're going to want to, in turn, do that for other people when they're older. It's the ripple effect. I mean, the ripple effect for you, Brad, is probably this podcast. You're reaching thousands of people and helping lots of people. The ripple effect that you can have on just one choice or one decision can affect hundreds and or thousands of people, and you don't even realize it.
It's amazing. I stand by that 100%. I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you have a lot going on, some family commitments later, but one thing is empathy and even just empowerment and really gratification. And what I mean by that is telling people thank you, right? How many times are there someone that's had an impact on our life and we go and call them thank you or say just love you, thinking about you? I mean, we don't do that enough as people, right? To just edify. Yeah. I guess that's the word. Sorry, I've been on the podcast. Where's the word I'm looking for? It's edification, edify. But we need to do that more, right, as people. And, Toby, it's remarkable you shared. I feel inspired from this. And just it's amazing what you're doing, with what's on your plate, that balance, and making time for all these things. And, I think it's really important that, what do you have that's upcoming and exciting? What do you have, what are your websites for us to follow along this journey and even give back to the Let It Be Foundation?
Well, Let It Be has its own website if you want to check it out. And we've actually got a cool country concert coming up in about a month, I think September 17. So you can go online and look at that if you're local. You can buy tickets for that. And we're having a benefit dinner right before the concert. But yeah, my own website is cornellcustomconstruction.com. So you can check us out there. Instagram is Cornell Custom Construction, same for Facebook. And I am on LinkedIn. I know you're very active. I go in spurts. I'll be active for a little while. And even Instagram, I'm not near as active as I need to be. I do a lot of stories, but posts just take so much time to do, as you know. I kind of have really fallen off the wagon as far as doing posts, and I know I need to do better on that. But I do like doing stories because they take, literally you're walking around the job, hey, look at this. And, it doesn't take hardly any time. So if you follow us, I do a lot of stories. I'll try and start posting more.
And he looks really good when he's wearing this AFT hat that I've seen.
I love that hat. So I actually got some company hats that were made from that same company.
Nice.
So
I love it.
I'll send you one so you can return the favor and wear it.
Oh, I'll return the favor.
I think the hat you gave me when we were golfing, I gave you one too. I think Paul ended up going in your office and taking it.
He did take it.
Yeah, because he used it on, I don't know, he had like his 1,000th post or 5,000, whatever it was. He had some memorable occasion and he wore that hat while he was doing it, and then he tagged me in it, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I go
because I brought it into work and I hadn't even worn it yet because I brought it back from our golfing in California, and he saw it on my desk. He's like, I want them all. Yeah, you can have it, because he's like, I love that hat. So.
Yeah, I'll get you a couple more. So
well, that's awesome.
So yeah,
we've been amazing, Toby. I know, again, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy with all these things, but thanks for inspiring us and spending time today.
Oh, it's no problem at all. It's an honor to actually be on this podcast with you, and just so everybody knows, I've met up with Brad a few times now in person, and it's no act. You know, he is as nice in person as he comes off on his Instagram and this podcast. He's one of the good guys, and it's an honor to know him. So, you know, just keep doing what you're doing, Brad, because it's an awesome thing.
I'll pay you later. Thanks. Thanks, Toby. Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.